Welcome to Registered, the podcast of the Catholic Register, where we'll be taking a look beyond the headlines of the stories that graced all of our platforms this past week. I'm Mickey Conlon, editor of the Register, alongside associate editor Quinton Amundson and reporter Luke Mandato. This week's episode is brought to you by the digital edition of the Catholic Register. Go to catholicregister.org to sign up for your trial subscription at no cost and no obligation. Well, I'm glad to be back after a week off, and I thank you guys for keeping things in running order in my absence. Well, I also come back to what looks like some good news on the MAiD front. That, of course, is medical assistance in dying. It seems, as Quinton reports this week, and it's been hinted at elsewhere, that the expansion of MAiD to those with mental illness may be paused, and can we dare hope pushed back well beyond the March 17th, 2027 date that it's at right now. Possibly quashed totally? Let's hope so. Quinton, what can you tell us about what's coming out of Parliament Hill?
We definitely could hope it could be quashed for culture of life advocates, but it looks like a pause is definitely in order. But Mark Carney has not agreed to provide any comment because he is waiting for the joint committee of the senators and parliamentarians to put together their final report. They've been meeting for over a couple of months, and their last meeting was May 5th, and it featured the presence of Alex Schattenberg of the Euthanasia Prevention Coalition as a speaker. He was really barred from taking part in the process the last couple of cycles where MAiD was discussed, so his ability to be a contributor is significant. So I think that they are putting forward some recommendations, and we should have a better sense before the parliamentarians recess for the summer, so that's scheduled for June 19th, when a pause could potentially be approved in Parliament and how long that would be. So we still have quite a bit of work to do, but they don't have that much time. March 17th, 2027 will be here before you know it. So they have to really have a serious proposition. And if there is to be a delay, I don't think it'll come in the form of Bill C-218. The Liberals very much would want to offer their own solution rather than give throw some weight behind a conservative-backed bill. Just based on where we are with the partisan games where in Parliament, it's more likely that they'll table their own bill and kind of go from there. But
And Bill
promising signs, we'll see where it goes.
C-218, give us a little heads up on that.
Yeah,
What is
Bill C-218 is the bill from Tamara Jansen, and
we've spoken
it is a
about?
bill that calls for the permanent abandoning of the expansion of MAiD for individuals who are solely mentally ill. And I don't think that there is an appetite for a permanent abandonment of going down that pathway down the road. And we're going to have to see, but there's been a lot of pushes from the Canadian Catholic Church. Archdiocese of Toronto did a big nationwide campaign, the Help Not Harm campaign, to try and build support for that bill. It may not be ultimately the bill that brings this pause into being, but I think that the pressure and public intrigue over Bill C-218 is influencing the conversation and pushing Ottawa in a direction to consider a pause more than they did a year ago. It seemed like we were almost on an inevitable track towards expanding MAiD to mental illness a year ago. So something different's in the air.
Well, and I guess, as you say, where Alex Schadenberg from the EPC, well, he was invited to speak. He only got his 5 minutes, just like everyone got their 5 minutes to talk on this, but that's 5 minutes more than he's been granted in how many years now? Because, well, no one wanted to hear any naysayers in there. I bet dying with dignity was at the table all the time when Alex was barred from there.
Well, and that Helen Long of Dying with Dignity was sitting right beside Alex Schattenberg. So, yeah, two opposing sides coming together. And, very diplomatic the way that they treated each other in the room. What's very interesting is that Alicia Duncan only had 5 minutes, and she and her sister Christy have become very powerful advocates against the expansion of MAiD because of the experience of what happened with their mother, Donna. There seem to be a lot of breakdowns in the system with the way that she was allowed to be released from a psychiatric unit after just 72 hours after a suicide attempt, and inconceivably allowed to have MAiD just hours afterwards. And there were a lot of problems with the case, and she tried to bring her very complex story to light, Alicia did, in just 5 minutes. A very difficult thing to do, to talk about such a complex case in 5 minutes, but she acquitted herself very well. I don't think that there were certain senators and MPs in the room that were very interested in engaging in what she had to say. If you look at the video, it seemed like they were more trying to get her to corroborate statements that upheld their narrative and their view. So everybody kind of came into the meeting with their own agenda, but these witnesses did the best they can to put truth out there and speak it to power.
Quinton, do you get the feeling that the heat's on a little bit when we hear about the fact that maybe there is some cracks happening where people are starting to listen and these statements are coming out, and we've covered them here at the Register. We've covered care, not coercion. You've covered stories about cases of negligence or coercion surrounding MAiD. When you hear that, people are finally starting to listen and even just get their 5 minutes to get their thoughts out, even when there may be no real avenue to our final goal with this, but even just the push and the fight back, what's encouraged you about seeing that and reporting on that?
Well, I think what we're definitely seeing more stories come out there about just how there are breakdowns, and there are people that are being offered MAiD that really shouldn't. We're hearing positive momentum from the Bill 18 in Alberta and the reforms happening there, and other provinces are like, well, why can't we consider that too? And perhaps maybe more powerfully, we're having international jurisdictions look at Canada as a cautionary tale, like Scotland and the UK and other nations are like, oh, wow, like we can't really open this Pandora's box. We have to hit the pause there because it was sold as a very limited and very controlled, system in Canada when it was originally approved 10 years ago. But the floodgates just opened so dramatically, and we reached 100,000 MAiD deaths last month, according to all the projections, and that was never supposed to happen when it was originally argued at the court level with Carter v. Canada, and then the original Bill C-14 that really legalized this form of medical treatment. So I think there's a lot of combination of stories taking place that are giving people pause. So we'll see, but it seems like we're trending in a promising direction for culture of life advocates.
And as we speak right now, today is the March for Life in Ottawa. So hopefully this is going to put a little jump in their step as they take their little walk around downtown Ottawa, in support of life. So, hey, it's a little win right now, and hopefully it's the start of something even bigger. And as you've written, Quinton, you were at the press conference yesterday about the March for Life, and we've got the example in Slovenia where they've had themselves a little win. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Alice Primick, I think, is going to be one of the most popular people in Ottawa because she showed a roadmap of how it was done. He led a citizen referendum that stopped the assisted dying law in Slovenia. So the approval of lethal medication for, people that, could, like elderly or, vulnerable people, that is off the table just 17 months after another citizen referendum put it into being. So he was able to mobilize a lot of groups especially the Catholic Church. A lot of people are noticing that his work with mobilizing the Catholics to get them to vote for this is promising. So he's going to be speaking on Parliament Hill at the Rose Dinner, which is a big gala event, alongside Alex Schattenberg. So I imagine he'll provide some tips and some words of hope about how do we continue to have pro-life victories here in Canada. So I think a lot of people are going to be picking this guy's brain during his brief stay in Ottawa.
All right. So, as we say, little victories, a little at a time. So, we'll see what happens. So, continuing down that good news path, and I guess this is going to depend on your perspective, but it's the legacy being left the Diocese of London with the retirement of Bishop Ronald Fabbro, the Basilian. The good news is for Bishop Fabbro himself, who gets to enjoy some downtime after a long life of service. I guess with the good comes the bad. And what's the bad? Well, he's going to be missed dearly in London. As Luke told us, as he was able to speak with Bishop Fabbro this week after 24 years of service as bishop. So what's next for the bishop? And can you tell us how do the people of the diocese reacting to Bishop Fabbro and his guiding hand over these past 2.5 decades?
Yeah, thanks, Mickey. I don't want to say it was like covering a funeral, but in a way it sort of felt that way when you speak to the people around the diocese. Of course, thank God Bishop Fabbro is still in great health. He said that himself, but the way they spoke just about how much they're going to miss his service and his presence around the diocese was very palpable when covering this story. Before we get into all the great things he's done across those 24 years, as for what's next right off the bat, he wants to remain active. He kind of made a little bit of a joke that the retired priests are often busier in their retirement than they are when they're active in service. And
I think we've all seen that.
That's right. That's right. So he says he wants to do sort of more of the same, visiting parishes on the weekends, helping out with younger priests in the area, and just keep engaging with the people, whether that's through celebration of Mass or different sacraments. He wants to be around. So retirement for him at this point is really more of a title than an action, I would say. But it was incredible to hear from him. You know, it's kind of this thing where you talk to a lot of bishops as a Catholic reporter, but I had never spoken to Bishop Fabbro before. He was kind of the elusive one for me. So to finally get him on the line and hear from him and all he's done was incredible. It was funny. We started the call and I said, I'm pretty sure you've been shepherding the Diocese of London for just slightly longer than I've been alive. And we did the math, and it is correct that he predates me in just his service to the Diocese of London by a few months. So that alone should go to show you that it's been a real lifetime, at least my lifetime, for him of service to those people. So it was great to hear from him. Of course, you talked about his legacy as a Basilian. He comes from a prior role, professor of theology for St. Joseph's College in Edmonton, and of course, maybe a little bit more notable, professor of theology at the University of St. Michael's College here in Toronto, Mickey. He's Sudbury native, and he was also the general counselor of the Basilians in 1993, and he actually was able to become general superior a few years later in 97. That's the role he held until he took over the diocese in 2002 when I came around. So it was great to hear from him. Different voices in the education field and the Diocese of London gave their thoughts in that article and just congratulating him and thanking him for all he's done. So it was incredible to hear from him and from all the people that care about him so much.
Well, it's pretty amazing that the Diocese of London, it's a good-sized diocese. Sure, it gets swept under the carpet a little bit, being so close to the Archdiocese of Toronto. But there's something's always going on there, right? And the thing is, we don't hear an awful lot about it. And to me, a lot of times, that's a really good thing. So you find out someone who's done a good, even a great job, quite often you've not heard about it. That's because it's not ruffled any feathers, and everything he's done has basically been the right thing. So no one's upset. It may not seem like much has been accomplished, but I would say that he's done a lot of right things. Like
Yeah.
one of the first things he did, he took on the sexual abuse crisis.
And he was given a lot of praise for the way he handled that. And so one of the other things is launching the longstanding pastoral plan, embracing a full future of hope, something that the diocese still follows today. It was one of those things, you said it best, Mickey. I went in with sort of an understanding of what's been going on in the Diocese of London, but really it's almost like a really well kept secret. All the great work they've done was starting to unpack as I talked to Bishop Fabbro, and it seemed like he had a hand in all of those things, whether vocations or support for young people, evangelization, uh, really everything that the diocese has been doing, he's had some sort of responsibility in. So he's been getting a lot of praise for that. And like you said, he didn't rustle a lot of feathers. He kind of did his work very humbly and spiritually day in and day out. And it's just one of those things when you start to break it down, you realize how much had actually been going on these past 2 decades plus. So I try and give my best account of that there, but I'm sure there's still a lot missing. It's hard to stay for 24 years and not have a laundry list of things that you've been involved in.
Yeah, yeah. So our congratulations and best wishes to Bishop Fabbro in his, may we call it a semi-retirement, perhaps? So
A very, very active retirement, maybe.
yeah, yeah. And our best wishes also go out west to our friends the Oblates, who we're about to see them celebrate 200 years since St. Eugene de Mazenod, the Oblate founder, received papal approval for the order. Now, this is an order that has very much shaped Canada's west and north. So, Quinton, as a fellow who I would say is in probably both Canada's west and kind of north, you've seen the Oblates in action probably more than us out east.
They're pretty impressive. I mean, they did start in the east. I mean, in the St. Hilaire, Quebec, and what's really awesome that within less than 20 years they were able to spread their presence in a very powerful way across the country. So, just the frontier spirit that they were willing to go anywhere possible. And I mean, that is the reputation of the Oblates. They were called the specialists of difficult missions, and they would go anywhere that many other groups would say no, that it just seems too hard, or it seems too uncomfortable. They always said yes, and they would always strive to live among the people. They cultivated a lot of intimate, relationships with, various indigenous groups. They pretty much founded every single diocese, like really, so many of them west of Ottawa, especially in Western Canada and the North. There's maybe just a couple of exceptions there, and they are continuing to be very active in their role of promoting that very simple, humble way of life through the various retreat programs and spiritual activities. So they've touched essentially everything. The church in Western Canada would not be what it is today without them. So it was just phenomenal hearing the stories of the great heroes. And I mean, a lot of these bishops, and priests who were entrusted, they were in their late 20s and early 30s, and it was their ingenuity and their drive that, with guided by the Holy Spirit, that have helped shape the church what it is today. And they deserve our kudos.
And as you say, they're still around. Obviously not in the numbers that they used to be. I believe in your story you said there was once at one point in Canada 2,000 oblates.
Yeah, and it seems like it's kind of hard to get an exact number, but it's in the lower hundreds for sure. And I mean, they are at a point where they just have to appreciate their past victories when they just had more of a visible presence and they're doing their best to empower lay leaders to pick up the torch. I think the Star of the North Retreat Center in St. Albert is a good example of that. Really, it is led by lay people, and Archbishop Sylvain Lavoie is just a good, shepherd, but there still is an active presence in terms of the leadership of Kiwatin La Pass. Archbishop Suze Jesu, who was just installed earlier this year, he is an oblate. So he will have an important role. And I mean, that is a archdiocese that is very much animated by First Nations groups. So that'll be very important, the Indigenous reconciliation. And the oblate documents are going to be very important with ongoing reconciliation efforts. Because, yes, there are some complicated parts of the story, with residential schools. To be fair, there are so many people that have benefited, they said, from the Oblates' relationship with First Nations, and also students that went to the residential schools. Of course, there are, people that have had very negative experiences. But the Oblate archives are going to be just very important in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's continued work. So the Oblate's presence is different, but it's still relevant and powerful in many ways.
Yeah, and we have our own oblate, of course, and that would be the prolific spiritual writer, Father Ron Rolheiser, who's been writing for the Register and a number of other papers, starting with the late Western Catholic Reporter for, more than 3 decades. So a shout out to him for all of his contributions to the Register. And if we're going to give out shout outs to the priests, how about to the 4 newest priests for the Archdiocese of Toronto, the ordination mass, which Luke attended this past weekend?
Yeah, big shout out from the Catholic Register. Our sincerest congratulations to our 4 newest priests, Matteo Bertozzi, Moonjun Alphonse Choi, Matthew Tilio, and Victor Valdez, of course, receiving their ordination to the priesthood this past weekend at St. Michael's Cathedral Basilica. It's funny, Mickey, it's so hard to write about this ordination mass without coming off as cliche, but it really is this beautiful sort of just hushed quiet over the whole service when that rite of ordination is taking place, the way that they listen to Cardinal Frank Leo and just really hang on to every word during the homily when he gives out the final instructions after decades, across all of them of preparation and formation in the seminary coming to fruition on that day. It really was beautiful. Their families were there. You could see the staff sort of bringing the nonas up to the front row and getting all the families in order and getting everyone set up. Just this air of excitement about everyone there, but also a really spiritual and quiet, the word escapes me, but it's very tranquil almost, the way the cathedral listens to every word. And St. Michael's Choir School with fantastic performances during that day as well. It was really beautiful to be a part of. I've been to a few ordination masses now, and it's always great to see. And yes, we extend our congratulations to the newest priests and wish them the best. I believe Bertozzi will be at St. Wilfrid's in Scarborough, Choi at Merciful Redeemer in Mississauga, Tulio will be at St. Patrick's in Mississauga, and Valdez at Blessed Trinity right in Toronto. So all the best as they take on this new role. And yeah.
Yes, definitely all the best. And all you people out in those parishes, please welcome them. So I think that's going to bring us to an end of this episode of Registered. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me this week. I'd like to thank all you people who are tuning in. And a big thanks to our sponsor. Oh, that would be us, wouldn't it? Yes, the digital edition of the Catholic Register. Go to catholicregister.org to sign up for your trial subscription at no cost and no obligation. And to keep on top of all the Catholic news at home and around the world, make sure you visit that very same website, catholicregister.org. Hope to see you all next week. Thanks again.